Hello, my name is Carlo Cicero, and I'm a student at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And I wanted to share with you something today of what I've been learning and thinking about while being here at Southern Seminary. And something that's continually come up in my mind is this idea that we need time and time again to meditate on the holiness of God. We need to remember that He is the one who is all truth, who is all honor, who is all justice and purity and loveliness, and the one who is worthy to be commendable and worthy to be praised. If we don't do this, what happens is in our relationships with believers and our relationships with unbelievers, we start to affirm things that are not good for us and are not good for them and are actually blasphemous against our great God. And what happens is something that happened to us often as unbelievers, but can be a danger for us even as believers. And it's as we are so consumed with the things that surround us in this world, that we're so surrounded by the detestable and the grotesque that the world throws at us, that we would start to think, as Calvin said, the things that are slightly less vile than the most vile things we see in the world are actually those things that are the most pure. And what he means by that is that we start to look at and we know that there are all these horrific things, and we start to think that, oh, as long as I'm not that bad, as long as this thing is not that bad, maybe it's actually good. Maybe it's actually worthy to be praised. That happens to us sometimes in our relationship with believers, and that's what results when we actually as churches don't engage in church discipline, because we think that people engaging in sin are not to be warned. And we worry that if we were to bring up their sin, that it actually would be unloving or ungracious. But that defines love and grace outside of the way the Scriptures does. And so it defines love and grace outside of the way God does. But we want to be with God. We want to align ourselves with what God has said. And so often I think when we read the Scriptures even, we must be reminded that what we must think is how God thinks. We must never align ourselves with Satan in his path. We must never align ourselves with Satan and his ways. Instead, we must align ourselves with how God thinks. And so as we come to the Scriptures, we must be reminded that what God says is not only what is right, but what is right is what is good for us and good for all people. And so as we engage with unbelievers, there's a need in our day to be reminded that the less vile is not pure. So those things that are detestable to God, those things, especially as it comes increasingly to us in homosexuality or perversions of all sorts, it's the things that remind us, the things that try to tell us, rather, that abortion is permissible, or rather that we should define ourselves by how we feel on the inside rather than what God has said about us on the outside. But these things are not far from the church either. Sometimes what happens is what Dr. Albert Mohler calls evangelical relativism, that when our family members, our relatives, start to engage in practices which are detestable in the sight of God, we start to think in our hearts, well, I love that person. Maybe I should go along with them. Maybe I actually should affirm those things that are sinful in their life. But what that does is that affirms the less vile things as those things that are most pure. And it's actually hateful towards a friend, a relative, a brother, a sister, a mother, a cousin, who's actually following a path to their destruction. And so it is essential for every one of us that we look instead at the holiness of God, that we would meditate on that God never does anything that is not perfect, and that every end He accomplishes has been accomplished by just means. Unlike us, He has never sinned, and He never will sin. And so we must consider how He acts, how He interacts, and define love and grace according to His standard, so that we would actually truly love people, loving them with grace and with truth by the way God has said they should be loved. Brothers and sisters, it's essential that we must not love those things that are less vile, but those things that are truly pure. And so I want to thank you for your support and just encourage you with some truth that the Lord's been teaching me through the fine faculty here at Southern Seminary and through my studies in the Scriptures.